Hey everybody, welcome to the Rhinestone Podcast. My name is Banner Driscoll. I am here with the wonderful Teresa Knox. Teresa Knox has an amazing book out called Sanctuary of Sound. This thing is heavy. This is a beast right here. This is over 300 pages of amazing artifacts, details. It's a story of the incredible church studio. And Teresa, what I want to know first off, right off the bat, is why should music fans care about the church studio?
Hi, Banner. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And that is such a good question. It matters. The building itself is 110 years old, and I love talking about it. I don't like to live in the past, but the significance of the early churchgoers back in 1915 through what happened with Leon Russell in the 1970s, it matters because it made a significant impact on American music. Not only his entrepreneurial record label, Shelter Records, but the opportunity that he gave the musicians that came through there, including people like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and his band, Mike Campbell and Ben Mont, and all of the other session players. Many of them went on to have really amazing careers as session players and, you know, received fame in their own right. The Gap Band is another one I can think of that he plucked out of Tulsa and brought into the studio. So that matters because that music is important and it all different types of genres, but I find that our musicians today that record with us find it very inspiring. Not only how they recorded music, but how they wrote music and how they marketed the music, how they put it out, and how they engaged with their fans. So it matters because it's a great lesson that we can use today.
So one of the things I'm really fascinated about is I'm a music nerd, music history nerd, and you talk about great American music cities, and the obvious ones come up: New York, Nashville, Austin, Texas, and maybe L.A. You could throw L.A. in there. Um, what? Why is Tulsa not talked about in the same regard as these places are? Because I'm looking at these people and reading your book. I mean, Tulsa is just stacked with these critically acclaimed, adored artists. I mean, you got J.J. Cale, you have Leon Russell, Gap Band, as you said, which is just wild. Why do you think that is not talked about as much as say other cities?
You know what? I don't know. I think, just we're strategically located in the United States. We're not coastal. A lot of people consider us a flyover or drive through, but those that know really know. I think we are a very legitimate music city. Not only are we the capital of Route 66, and you think of all the musicians that have traveled from Chicago to LA, stopping in Tulsa, but we have some of the most well known musicians ever. One of my favorites is Jim Keltner, an amazing drummer from Tulsa, Oklahoma. You mentioned J.J. Cale. I mean, just look at his impact on Eric Clapton. And Eric Clapton was so taken by Tulsa musicians for 5, 6 years. He only worked with Tulsa musicians, and look at all the music that they put out um, when they recorded in Florida. So I don't know why. You think about the 1940s too. This is where Bob Wills and the Playboys got their start at the historic Haynes Ballroom. But so many cities want to be a music city, and they build things and they try to bring people in. They have big nonprofits that have, writers rounds and training and incubators, but Tulsa already has the infrastructure, and I think more people are learning about what we have, and with tourism being so big in our state now, it's our 3rd biggest industry. I think when people get here, they're like, "Holy crap, I cannot believe, all of these things are happening," and not only the church studio, but you think about the Bob Dylan Center as well.
What is the Bob Dylan Center? I'm not familiar with that.
Well, Bob Dylan's archives are in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So Bob had this affinity for Woody Guthrie. So we have the Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa. And the same group that put that together acquired. It's a really great organization called the George Kaiser Family Foundation,
Mhm.
and they acquired Bob's archive and receive the blessing, from Bob. The front door is a big iron, showpiece that Bob made, and it's just incredible. It attracts visitors from all over the world to Tulsa, and people scratch their heads like, "Hey, why is Bob in Tulsa? What's the connection?"
Yeah.
I mean, he had a great connection with Leon Russell when you think about the concert for Bangladesh,
Mhm.
but, yeah, it's really extraordinary.
What do you think Tulsa does, like, is, maybe whether it's the city or the culture to inspire so many great musicians? And because it's become such a place too, like, and you point this out in the book that, people like Clapton would come through and just, "Hey, you're a Tulsa musician. You're coming to play with me. You're coming to tour with me." I mean, there's all sorts of stories like that. What makes Tulsa a breeding ground for all these great musicians?
I think it's the camaraderie, kind of the sisterhood, brotherhood that you see with the musicians. It really started with Leon in 1972. He was part of the wrecking crew, and I think he seemed to be disenchanted with what was going on in the industry. And when he came back to Tulsa, bought the church, converted it from a house of worship to a recording studio. He really built this really amazing infrastructure where artists could work together. I mean, you see someone like Dwight Twilley working on Tom Petty's album, and Tom is on Dwight's album. You see the Gap Band on Leon's album, or his alter ego, Hank Wilson. I mean, you had that, collaboration, that camaraderie, and he wanted to create an environment that was, pressure free. And so you can hear live music in Tulsa 7 days a week. And I think that brotherhood, sisterhood is still here today. And a lot of people talk about the sound coming from Tulsa, and it's called the Tulsa sound. And yeah, you could describe it as a certain genre, but I really think it's that collaborative, engaging. I want to support you. I'm not competing with you. And you see that even with the club owners, with the musicians going from one club to the other, or one band member going to another band just to support. And I really love that, and so they get a lot of practice, they get a lot of support, and, I think that that really helps with them being successful.
So, why do you think Leon Russell started the church?
Well, I think he was looking again for something different than what was happening in Los Angeles at the time. Of course, he had to go there, early in his career as a teenager when he went there, and he played on so many albums. And, after his success with first Mad Dogs and Englishmen, the Joe Cocker tour, he met, Denny Cordell, and he and Denny is a British producer that had really great fame with the Moody Blues
Mhm.
and so many others, but they wanted a new kind of record label that was very artist-centric, and with Leon as the founder, obviously, it was all about the artist. And then, the concert for Bangladesh, followed after that in 1971, and I think Leon, again, just wanted to give back to his hometown. He's from Tulsa, he grew up here, and he bought the building. I don't think he knew that, "Hey, I'm going to buy an old church and I'm gonna convert it into a recording studio." It was a very impulse purchase, it appears anyway, and, but he was a very spiritual person, and I think it's really, not a coincidence that he did, pick a church to make not only into a recording studio, but home offices for Shelter Records. Even the name Shelter, you think about what the symbolism of that name, I think really says a lot about the business that he was creating.
And so, talk to me about the marriage of Shelter Records and the church studio, because Shelter Records, I didn't know, I've heard of Shelter Records, but I didn't know it was connected to Leon Russell. And the main reason I know Shelter Records is because I'm a massive fan of Freddie King, and Freddie King did his best work on Shelter Records, like his Getting Ready record and all that stuff, which I didn't even know until doing research that Leon played on most of those records
Oh,
too.
yeah, he sure did.
Oh, and that was the
Yeah, I
piano
love
playing's
Freddie King.
gorgeous, gorgeous. I love it. Freddie King's the man. But what was the marriage of Shelter Records and, the church studio?
Well, the church, of course, was the recording studio for the Shelter Records artist. And Leon bought properties around the church. He actually owned like 14 bungalows around. So the one that was directly next door became a secondary office for Shelter Records, but he did start the record label in California. He had a studio called Sky Hill, and that was about 1969, again, 1970, around the Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour,
Mhm.
is really when that model developed. But, again, I think he was a little tired of, the rat race happening in, that part of the country and wanted to come back to his roots. And so when he bought the church, obviously, he wanted to open it up to other people to record, but the primary function was to service all of the Shelter Records artists, including Freddie, who moved to Tulsa. So Freddie was the oldest artist assigned to Shelter Records. But through Leon, he introduced him to Don Nix, who wrote that amazing
Yeah,
song
going
"Going Down."
down. Yeah.
Yes, I became friends with Don. Unfortunately, he passed away last New Year's Eve, but, he loved Freddie, and it changed his life. But all of the artists worked on, each other's, albums and recordings. But that's really the connection. It was a recording studio, but there was space to have, corporate offices for the record label.
So, obviously, Shelter Records, was this place where so many artists thrived critically. It didn't really ever like, there weren't these giant records. It didn't become like a Motown with number 1 hits everywhere. But looking back, there are all these great, great records that people do love and cherish, like music fans especially. You go through and, like I said, I have all those Freddie King records that are
I
from
know, they're
Shelter
so
Records.
good.
They're so good. Um, what do you think led so I wanna get to this because I do wanna get to your part in this, which is obviously taking over the church studio and redoing it and everything and renovating it. But what led to the decline of the church studio and Shelter Records in the late '70s? What would you say?
Well, you're right, it was a short-lived record label, and it kinda makes me sad because it was such a brilliant model, and the marketing, um, assets and the strategy was so great, but there was a lot of disruption. Just like today, there's a lot of disruption in the music
Mhm.
industry. At the time, disco, things going digital, of course, the studio was heavy on tape, and we have tape today, which we absolutely love, analog
Yeah. Yeah, you
recording.
literally got it right behind you.
Yes, yes, I definitely have a reel-to-reel in my house here. But, there were creative differences between Leon Russell and his partner. So his partner didn't own part of the real estate, but he was his partner, his 50-50 partner in Shelter Records. Again, his name was Denny Cordell. And Leon married, Mary McCreary, his second wife, and they put out some music. And he had crossed over a little bit to country, well, a lot to country with his alter ego, Hank Wilson. And Denny Cordell wanted to go in another direction. And I think they just, I don't know. I wish I could go back in time and interview both of them or be
Mhm.
a fly on the wall to see what was happening, but it seems like they were really, really discouraged. And so by the late 70s, Leon had started another label called Paradise Records, and Denny Cordell kept Shelter Records. However, he didn't do anything with it. And in fact, the trademark lapsed in 1981. And when I acquired the building 9.5 years ago before the renovation, I went ahead and snagged that trademark just because it was tied to the building. And I thought that was really, really important. And we have Shelter Records merch and we collaborate with the Tom Petty estate. And so it's really important to keep that record label alive, not necessarily as a record label, but the brand and the
Yeah.
philosophy of what it stood for, and maybe a record label in the future. But, yeah, I don't know the exact answer, but I know that things were really tough in the industry. A lot of competition, a lot of viable substitute products for
Mhm.
a traditional recording studio. Really like today, people were starting to, open studios in their home and Leon had a lot of creative projects, and so managing a record label while working on your own career, I mean, I can only imagine the challenges that came up with that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and I think too, like, um, Leon seems like one of those people that just, what I've seen of him in interviews and stuff, that when he gets bored of something, he moves on kind of thing, and
Yes.
I feel like it feels like a move on kind of a thing, like, it faded
Yeah.
away, the fun of it faded off, it became more work than fun, and that's what it feels like from your book and even from, footage I've seen of him. He just at least that's kind of the vibe I get from it. I don't know.
Yeah, he was always ahead. I mean, you think of the 40 track, Stevens he had. I mean, everything he did was really trailblazing. I mean, I had an opportunity to interview Roger Lynn, who invented the drum machine,
Mhm,
and Roger was Leon's guitarist. And he told me he was really inspired by the drummers of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Keltner, Jamie Oldacre, um, Chuck Blackwell, and so many others. But when he received his Grammy for inventing that, he gave a big shout out to Leon because they were using a Roland drum machine at the time. But Leon was like, "Isn't there a better way that we can do
mhm.
this?" And you think about the Lynn drum machine coming, in part out of Tulsa, Oklahoma at the church studio. And look what Prince did with it. He
No.
really is the one that took it to a whole new
Oh, yeah.
level. And so, I give credit to Leon just like Roger did for things like that. But you're right. It's like, okay, I've mastered this. I mean, he is the master of space and time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's go on to the next thing. And, and I don't come from the entertainment industry, but man, you've got to stay on your toes.
Mhm.
I mean, we work with so many musicians. We had 1,500 musicians that came through our doors in 2025,
Oh,
and just
wow.
hearing their stories and them sharing their heart and, some it's like, "Wow, how did this person make it?" "How did they get signed so quickly?" And then you see these other people, busting their ass every single day, doing all of these things, and they're so good. There's not I wish there was a playbook, for it, and I think a lot of that started in the 1970s.
Yeah, it's wild out there. Just put it I mean, I talked to a very famous drummer, not too long ago named Chad Wackerman, and he put it this way, which is that, uh, a musician can sell anything but their own music. They can sell T-shirts, they can put their songs in commercials, they can put their music in movies to help sell movies, but as far as their own music, it's so hard to get out there, and I think the music industry now is just so much it's just so chaotic and so crazy, and I can't even imagine what it was like even then.
But you have an opportunity to be empowered just like your podcast. I
Mhm,
mean, content and, they just wanna hone in on their musicianship. They don't necessarily wanna be social media experts, but it seems like, the ones that we've seen that get snagged by the majors, like Warner, Chappell, and
mhm,
Universal, and some of the others, I mean, the artists already have a fairly significant following.
mhm. Yeah, okay, so let's go back to, the church studio. So, obviously, Leon gets bored, we'll leave it at that. Denny Cordell doesn't really do anything with Shelter Records. What happens to the studio in between, 19 I think it was 1978 and, I think it was 2016 when you bought the studio? What happens in between there? That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a really long time. There were 5 owners. The most significant would be, Steve Ripley and his lovely wife, Charlene, of the Tractors, and, they were a great band, and he was an amazing inventor, engineer, producer, and a lot of people came through his doors during that time. He was not the 2nd owner after Leon. That was, the Indian Council for Drug Abuse and Addiction, and, they did a really neat thing. They weren't recording, but, they used the live room, which is the original sanctuary of the church, for acting lessons and dancing and so many different things, and I mention that because the great Wes Studi got his acting lessons at the church studio. I'm a huge Wes fan.
Mhm.
If you like Dances with Wolves, I mean, Oscar-winning, actor. He's probably the foremost authority of how Native Americans are portrayed in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
And, he's been back since then. I've had a chance to interview him, and, it just this church that's located just east of downtown Tulsa, it's just incredible the creativity that came out of there.
Mhm.
But when you look at, Steve Ripley years, he did a lot of really amazing things, and, there were some other owners, and then the guy I bought it from had it for 10 years, didn't do a lot with it. I mean, to be honest, the building was in really rough shape when Leon acquired it in '72, and he had tunnel vision on getting it ready to be a recording studio. So the slanted floor he leveled, he gutted out the church pews, put all the acoustic treatments, hot wired the building and grounded it for all of the electrical and all the gear that he had. But the foundation was definitely compromised. And again, the 5 owners between Leon Russell and myself just really focused on, even though I'm sure they did maintenance on the building, it was really focused on running a business through there. So when I acquired it, I didn't know exactly my long term goal for the building, but my initial goal was to restore it and, secure it so it would be there for another 100 years.
And one of the things that you mentioned in the book was that the studio was not in good condition when you picked it up. Do you wanna elaborate on that? Like, what the condition was like when you found it?
Sure. Yes, it was in really rough shape. Water had penetrated the building, lots of flooding into the building, massive holes to the outdoor elements. Um, it had a lot of garbage in it. There were encampments, people that had been staying in there, and so, it was really rough, and, one of our first structural engineers that and I bought the building sight unseen. I mean, I knew
That's
it
so
was
wild.
yeah, I know. I just wanted it, and you've been there before, right? Where it's like, you have your mind set on something, it's like, "I have to have this," so
Yeah, yeah.
you're not thinking about anything else, and
Mhm.
so, I knew it was gonna be bad. I had been walking the property, picking up trash, doing different things, but, um yeah, I mean, it needed a lot of TLC. That's why the renovation, I mean, we estimated 2 years. It took 6.5 years, um,
Ooh.
to renovate it. COVID happened during that time, but really that didn't cause the delay. It just needed so much more work, including the foundation. We went all the way down to bedrock. The building
Mhm,
was kind of, crinkly, imploding, and we shored it up.
mhm.
And then, yeah, just started on it, and during that time, I got listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and that falls under, National Park Service on the federal government, and then there's the State Preservation Office. So they have all these best practices and these rules when you are doing historic renovation. I call them not the Historical Society, but the Hysterical Society because it's really extreme. But, we wanted to do everything the right way, and that was really exciting on this project because the building was finished in 1915. So it had the people built this, it was for the people, by the people, and so it had a certain charm to it from the early pioneers of Tulsa, yet it had a very '70s vibe from what Leon did, that
Mhm.
period of significance, yet we know we need to make it a modern facility, ADA compliant and relevant to today's artists. So I've renovated, I've done new construction, I've done other historical properties, but this was the most challenging, but it was by far the most rewarding project I had ever done. And so I think you see a little bit of the turn of the century vibe with the '70s vibe with, modern amenities and elements to the decor.
So, we haven't really gone too much into your backstory, and that's fine. But, for those who don't know, you were a fairly successful entrepreneur before you did the church studio. What drives a successful entrepreneur to go and buy a studio, granted a legendary studio, sight unseen, and what's the driving factor for someone to 'cause it on paper, it does sound crazy, like, especially even $2,000,000 to spend on that is a kind of wild endeavor. What do you think drove you to go and do that?
Right. Yes, it did, and it ended up being significantly more than that after the 6.5 years. So it really took a life of its own. I've said this before, but it was almost like this out of body experience. And, part of it was a Christian church, so it has this spiritual foundation to it. But I started a business in my early 20s, and my whole identity was tied to this business, and it was in vocational education.
Mhm,
And I loved what we did because we took people from tax dependency to tax-paying citizenship. A lot of single moms, a prison ministry, getting them acclimated back into the workforce through vocational education. And I did that for over 2 decades. And then as an exit strategy, I planned on selling at our 20th anniversary, and I got cold feet, and then I ended up converting it from a for-profit institution of higher learning to a not-for-profit. And then the school converted. Overnight, I went from a single shareholder, owner, CEO to an employee, and I knew I'd stay an employee for 6 months, and then the school went to a president reporting to a board. And then I stepped down and then I didn't go to work. And I was like, and I'm a workaholic, right? And so
mhm,
I bought a little building near the church. I was renovating it, and it was fun. I became, general contractor, very hands-on.
mhm.
But when I acquired the church, I found myself going around the church and impulsively acquired it. I was grieving from my other job. I didn't, because again, I was so young when I started my business and I grew up with it from 0 employees to 350 employees to 46 different programs. I started it as a dental assistant school, but it was just my whole life. And so I think it was just kind of a healing thing for me to go in. And I'm a music fan. First and
Mhm.
foremost, I am a Leon Russell fan. I'm
Well,
a JJ Kell fan. I'm a David Gates fan. I'm a Jim Keltner fan, a Dwight Twilley fan, a Gap Band fan. I'm a fourth generation Okie. I was born in Tulsa. Any artist that came from Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'm obsessed with. Even younger ones like Ryan Tedder of One Republic and so many other, Hanson, you name it, I'm a fan. But and then I was a collector too. I started collecting memorabilia as a kid, and I had all of these items. So I was really excited about, hey, I can display these things and make this really cool place that people would enjoy coming
mhm.
to. So that's really how it came to be. And again, I never would have thought I would spend the millions and millions of dollars that I did on it in 6.5 years of my life, working on the renovation. We've been open for 3 years now, so that's where the 9.5 years, 2016. I guess we're going on 10 years.
Yeah,
A little bit later,
yeah.
it'll be 10. I can't believe it's a decade. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, my life's going before me. So, anyway, it's been a true honor and a joy to be able to learn more about the early church and more about Leon. I thought I knew everything about him, but I've interviewed about 400 people that either worked with him or came through the church or has some sort of affiliation with the building. And so it's been really amazing being able to tell that story and capture it forevermore because it wasn't something that was documented before.
During the renovation, were there some interesting things? Like, I mean, I imagine peeling back the layers and going to bedrock, like you said. I imagine there must have been some really fascinating things you uncovered. What were some of those things?
Yeah, because we have to peel every piece of wood plank and that was on the property just to do what we needed to do. And so we found hymnals that had slipped through the cracks, a lot of early church brochures. That
Mhm,
was really interesting. Um, Even though it was a ME church that's Methodist Episcopal, we found a handbook that was AME, that's African,
mhm,
Methodist Episcopal, and so I befriended the, great-grandson of the first pastor, and, his family said it was an integrated church, which was really unheard of in this part of the country, but definitely in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1915, and I thought that was really beautiful. One thing, and I talk about this a lot because I'm obsessed with wood and building,
Mhm.
but there are 11 wood species in the property. And that really, I mean, at first it was not off-putting, but it kinda looked like a quilt, but then I realized that, the people built this and, the ladies of the church would cook a chicken dinner, if people brought in their scrap wood, and so, before Leon got it, and I'm sure no one else ever noticed that there's red oak and white oak and pine and fir and mahogany and maple, but Leon brought in Oklahoma cedar, and cedar was a very popular facade that you would see in studios in the 1970s because acoustically it just sounds amazing. So Leon probably didn't know this, but he brought in that 11th wood species. So that was really neat to me, especially when I learned the history of the early church and why it was kind of pieced together with different types of materials. Because Tulsa, for those that don't know, we were built by the oil barons
Mhm.
and money was no object. We were Magic City in the 1920s, and we have some very, very, very elaborate churches, but this is very opposite of that. And so that's why that story was really interesting. And then just learning recently, we learned that Ricky Nelson recorded Wild Nights in Tulsa at the church. We acquired
Oh,
a
really?
Yes, I
Oh,
know because it's not documented anywhere, and I did uncover that a lot. Stevie Wonder recorded, that wasn't documented.
wow.
Kansas, I have tapes, 2-inch tapes of Kansas recording.
Have you listened to the Kansas tapes?
Oh, yeah, definitely, I've digitized them in Pro Tools. Yeah, they're
Oh, that's
incredible,
awesome.
and so I've reached out to them. I'd love to release, one is not on an album, the other one was on an album, but this is very prog rock sounding compared to the one that ended up a lot of the Hammond B3, I mean, it's amazing, but uncovering those things, is just really beautiful, and like I said, just most recently, Ricky Nelson, and I learned that he has twin sons, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson, and we've become friends with them, and we purchased a mic. It's called the Garden Party mic, but it's a Neumann M49 that Ricky, did a lot of, music on, and so we just networking with people has been such a beautiful part of the history and the story of the church.
Tell me about the bidet in the church studio.
I love that you're asking about that. So I know I have such a big photograph of
You do.
avocado green bidet,
Just
so
a quick second, I just wanna say, if you guys have not, this will probably be clipped, but Sanctuary of Sound, Teresa Knox, you guys have gotta read this book, it's amazing. There's so many great photos in there.
yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
It was such a fun project to work on. So, when Leon was, converting the building from a church to a recording studio, I had an opportunity to interview one of the construction guys that's still around. And Leon, just got back from Europe, and a lot of people don't know this, but Leon had a mild case of cerebral palsy, and the studio is on an upper level, compared to where the restrooms were on a lower level, and he said, "I need a bathroom right next to the studio," and there wasn't one there before, and he told the guys, "But I want a bidet," and they're, like, scratching their heads like, what's a bidet?" He said, "All I know is every Oklahoma redneck needs a bidet," and that's when Kohler came out with that avocado green, and when we're renovating that bathroom, we knew we did not wanna keep it as a bathroom there because we have beautiful public restrooms, and, we just did not need that bathroom, so it's actually an isolation booth for a recording, but the bidet was so cool looking, it's almost like a trophy of sorts, so
Mhm.
we kept the bidet, and during Leon's time, the guys plastered naked women on the walls around this green bidet and this green bathroom, and that had since been gone, but after interviewing several people, we found some vintage, new old stock wallpaper out of New York City that had a few breasts and a few other things, so
It's tasteful, it's tasteful.
it's in this way, and it's vintage, and then it's
Yeah.
period specific from the '70s, so we have this green bidet, this crazy wallpaper, and multiple mic connections, and acoustically treated in this room, so it's a lot of fun, so if you come to Tulsa, Oklahoma, take the tour, and you'll get to go check out the bidet.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely, now that I know that Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie museums are out there, like, I think Tulsa might be something I need to come down and visit one of these days. Maybe I'll make a video.
Yes, you will absolutely love it.
Oh, I know I would. Alright, so I do have a question because now, as far as I understand it, the church is like a full working studio. You mentioned you had 1,500 people coming in 2025, which is amazing for any studio. I mean, that's incredible. Um, but the church also functions as somewhat of a tourist archive, tourist museum, however you wanna call it, dedicated to all sorts of things from the '70s and the history of the church and things like that. How do you balance the duality of those? So, for example, like, the studio is kind of in my eyes, is a lot of times, like, I've done a lot of work in different studios all across the country, and, studio is kind of like a private kinda sanctuary. You get in, you get out, you do your job, you do your work. Some of them are a little bit more social. There's some I've seen where they've got little gardens and, one I've played at had, like, a little Zen garden in the middle of it, which was cool. But then, the other side of that is you have, like, the touristy, busy side of things where people are coming and going, and, you also host concerts there. There's a great video of Air Supply at the studio, which is awesome, and Taj Mahal did a Grammy-winning album, recorded there. How do you balance the keeping the studio part of it functional and useful, but also making sure that the, tourism side is also, properly maintained?
Yeah, that's such a great question because some of the studios that are kind of music museums now, they've realized they can make more money on tourism with merch and tours and events over the recording, and I totally get that. But first and foremost, we are a very, very serious recording studio. You can see that in our investment in our Japanese copper wire to our German glass that we use to our museum quality microphone collection that artists have access to our Neve 8068 console. I mean, we're very serious. But that's a good question because it scared the crap out of me that artists would view us as hokey because even though we can protect the integrity of the recording process, because they're up in their room, we have these doors that you have to have access. They can't hear a thing going on down below. But we have found, I mean, I really kind of tread slowly, even though tens of thousands of people walk in our door. But, we survey our, musicians, and they seem to like it. A lot of them take a break. We do have a lounge. We have a bar. I know it sounds just so wrong to say that at the church. We have our liquor
It's
license,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
if they want a cocktail or a drink, or we have our own coffee called the Wrecking Brew, and we have merchandise, but a lot of them just get exhausted recording and they want a break, so they'll go into the archive. A lot of them will ask about, "Hey, what do you have of Willie Nelson?" or something, and we can pull things out and we can show them. We can show them original handwritten lyrics, and a lot of them are so inspired by it. Even the Belfry, we have a really cool area, kind of you said Zen, kind of a Zen area. Kenny Loggins meditated up there. I mean, it has stained glass, it's just very beautiful. We have vintage turntable, and we can bring in a bottle of champagne, whatever they want. So there
Mhm.
are areas for them to go, but we're very, very serious about the recording process, and they can do it. They can go in the back way, get up there, and have no idea that we have 200 people down below. And, when you look at I love Muscle Shoals, RCA Studio B, and so many of the others I visited. I didn't know anything about I collect, turntables. I'm in a room now with tons of turntables. I have
Yeah, you
thousands
showed
of
them to me
vinyl records.
before we went on,
Yes.
I'm just so jealous. We gotta have a listening session one of these days, Teresa.
Oh my god, I'd love that. And so it was really easy for me to get into collecting gear, studio gear. But again, I just didn't have a background. So I started visiting studios. And one, I realized that it's a tough business. I mean, it hasn't appreciated in value. I mean, you're not able to I mean, technically, any studio, if you look at all of their overhead and expenses, it should be at least $1,000 an hour to rent any studio, but we're charging what Leon charged in 1972 because you can record anywhere. I mean, there are people that put out things from their phone, and it sounds pretty decent, but, you can't you can't, replicate what we do at the studio, but it
Mhm.
is kind of a niche, a very boutique industry at at this, time in history. But again, we have found that our artists love it, and we can see that by the same artists returning over and over. We work with our local artists, but we also work with major labels. We work with major networks. We had Netflix in this week on a reboot of a series. They've been in a couple of times before. We've had 4 or 5 Disney projects. So they return because they know we're serious. We have great engineers, we have great gear, and we're very efficient at what we do, even though we've only been open for 3 years. But I have a great, very seasoned team as far as the audio staff. So, I mean, it's been a challenge, but we've learned to navigate it and we've learned to leverage it to our benefit. That makes it even more interesting to our recording artist. Because again, a lot of places, I think Muscle Shoals now, they do tours during the day and they do recordings
Mhm.
like overnight. And we do a lot of night recordings, but we can do them simultaneously with everything else going on. And it works out.
Yeah, I mean, so probably about a decade ago, I went to Stax Records, and in Memphis, and it's wonderful, but it is 100% a museum now. It is um, it is like you go in there. I mean, and it's not that it's an awesome museum. It's a badass museum. It's awesome. You got like Isaac Hayes' is Cadillac is in there. It's purple and gold, and you've got all these guitars from everybody, and
Memphis Man.
yeah, all this great stuff.
Hmm.
But it is kind of sad because 'cause you're just like, "Oh, there's so much magic in this room." As an
Yes.
artist, I would love to get in there. So I love the fact that you have made it um, a real usable working man
I
studio.
appreciate you saying that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't cross my mind because, the cost, and we brought in 27 miles of wire. I
Mhm,
mean, just the cost of what we did is so crazy, and I knew it would never be profitable, but we had to do it. I mean, I don't wanna just live in the past and have, old photos of Leon Russell and Freddie King on the wall. It's just, I love Motown, I love RCA, I love Stax, I love Sun, I love what Muscle Shoals have done. I think those are incredible, but, I had to do this. Plus, it's almost a lost art. We have an
mhm.
audio engineering program. I couldn't help myself. I started another school I was not into. There was somewhat of a shortage of engineers on the local market, so we take 6 students at a time, and, you know, there are very few training programs where they learn on tape or
Yeah,
how to do what we teach them. It's a hybrid program, so they have an online curriculum, how to use Pro Tools, how to do, what's sound and
yeah,
what's acoustics and all of that, but we've identified 100 core competencies that they need to be successful, and it's very, very, very hands-on, and even working on the stuff. I mean, my mic shop is in Nashville or Franklin, Tennessee,
mhm,
and then I have another person in New York that can work on one of our tape machine. I mean, there's only, like, 5 people in the country that can work on the Neve, and the Fairchild, that's one of our
yeah,
latest
yeah,
drill pieces, is a single channel Fairchild 660, and, there's no one, and so I feel really passionate about training a new generation on those old recording techniques and the repairs of them.
mhm,
I 'Cause, a lot of the old timers, they're kind of from the generation where they used to covet their knowledge, right?
mhm,
So, they didn't want anyone else to know because then their job, they could be replaced, but that doesn't fly anymore. I mean, we
mm-mm,
gotta document it, we gotta videotape it, we gotta create curriculum, we gotta create this workforce engine, and that's really how I see the church studio, not
mhm.
only in audio engineering, but content curation, video, and everything else that we need to stay relevant, with, in today's market.
And that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about, because so most musicians are terrible at business. Um, I feel a kindred spirit in you because I'm one of the few musicians I know, I should say, who has a. I'm not gonna say I'm a good entrepreneur, but I do have a somewhat entrepreneurial mindset. I've started a few businesses. I've done a few things like that. And so one of the things I'm really fascinated in is how you market the studio. because I think that's something that people are always interested in when they have a studio is how to get new clients, how to get more new warm bodies coming in the door that pay, right? And so when you have this amazing studio, obviously there's history in it, but there are studios all over the place, you know. I mean, I'm in Atlanta right now. I could throw a rock and I could hit 15 studios. So my question is how do you market the experience an artist has when they come to the church studio? Whether that's a big artist, whether that's a small artist, how do you what's the marketing strategy like?
Yeah, so it is very organic. We don't do any paid advertising. So the day after I bought
Really?
no,
Really? None? None?
none, 0. I
Wow.
mean, if you count time, time is more valuable than
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
We post literally every single day. So the day after I bought the studio, I sketched this logo. This is our logo here because I'm kind of old school. You began with the end in mind. So
Mhm.
I had to have something to get me because again, I had 24 hours of buyer's remorse. Like, what the hell have I done? Especially when you walked in and saw. I mean, I knew it was bad, but you don't really know until you walk into a place. And so got the website handle, all of the social handles, and I posted, you know, before photos and some of my Leon collection. And in 9.5 years, I've never skipped one day posting. You can go back to our Facebook page. You'll never see a missed Sunday. You'll never see a missed Monday. I literally post 7 days a week and often more than that. And so I think it's all about finding your voice, staying consistent with it. Try not to be tempted by AI, making posts, even though you can get some ideas from AI, but finding that authentic voice and staying true. And so we've had a very steady growth. We just hit 2 million views in 28 days in Facebook. And it took
Yay, that's
nine
awesome.
and a half years to get to 1 million views. And it
Mhm,
took 2 months to get to 2 million.
mhm.
So it starts getting that compounding effect. But we need call to action. I don't think we do enough call to action, but I'm trying to get better like every fourth, fifth, or sixth post. Buy merch, become a member, come and see us, book studio time for your next, record project. And so trying to get better at that. But we have a really diverse marketing mix, but it's almost all social. So we have a newsletter list. Everyone that walks in the door, we capture their email address. I'm not doing any texting to people because people get so annoyed with that, but we do e blast because people have control over their email.
Woohoo.
We're on YouTube, so a lot of the interviews that I've had, I put on YouTube. Most of them are for archival reasons, but people find them interesting, and we hit about we do really well. We're almost at 70,000 subscribers, I think, on YouTube now, so it's just very constant, consistent, posting, and, people just love it, and so that's really our advertising, our marketing strategy, I should say.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's it. It's social media.
I love it. Yeah, I was gonna say it's one of the things I really loved. It was actually really helpful for this interview was that the church has interviewed so many people that were involved with Leon, involved with Shelter Records, new artists, old artists. I mean, you guys had what's her name? John Lennon's, my is it May
Oh, maybe
Pang? May Pang, you guys just had May Pang in there. You guys interview authors and things like that, and, that was super helpful for me because I got to, get a lot of stuff from the source, from all these people and things like that, and also, you could get a chance to see how beautiful the church studio is and the live rooms and things like that.
yeah, we
Um
try to post that. I've been criticized for it as well. Um,
Really?
won't name any names from other recording studios, but they're of the mindset that this is a very confidential, sacred space, that you don't brag about who's recorded there or this or that. But honestly, uh, they're struggling, and so you
Yeah.
have to I think that we have to diversify it, and maybe it's because I came from a different industry that was very, very competitive. When you're competing with the University of Phoenix and other for-profit schools, we are the biggest customer of Google, um, and so, marketing is just I love marketing. I mean, that's why I was so inspired by Shelter Records when I started collecting advertisements of what Leon put in Rolling Stone
They're
and Billboard.
fascinating. They're
I
so
mean,
fascinating.
oh, they're so good, and I have some of
Yeah.
them in the book, and so I love marketing, and there's not a playbook for this because you don't the truth is you do not need the church studio to record, but you do need it if you wanna create the project that can come out of an amazing studio with amazing history, with amazing gear and the warmth of the acoustics and the analog gear, and so it depends on what you want, but in this fake age of AI and plastic and everything else, it's like Gen Z crocheting. There's a hunger for authenticity, and that's what you get, with our studio and with walking through and taking, a trip down memory lane of the past. And even if you're a young person, you cannot name one Leon Russell song, heaven forbid.
Yeah, yeah.
There's something there for you. But yeah, I've talked to a few and they're like, "Well, we would never," and at first I thought, "Oh, crap, I'm gonna be shunned by the industry because I'm throwing up our guts out there."
Mm.
But on the other hand, many reach out and it's like, "Please help us. We don't have any studio clients. It's very competitive. What can we do?"
Nope.
And
Nope.
so yeah, and I'm willing to share anything. Literally, I am making it up. I mean, again, there's not a
Yeah.
playbook for this in this day and age. It's like, do as much A/B testing as you can and see what works and look at your analytics, and that's what I do every single day.
I wanna ask about gear collecting because there's a picture in there. I don't want to dig it up out of the book, but it's salivating where you show all the compressors and all the buses and everything from the church studio of the analog gear in there. Um, as someone who said you say in the book, like you weren't someone who knew a whole lot about gear, and then all of a sudden you became obsessed because you're trying to get all these special pieces and different things like that. What was the gear collecting like for the church studio?
It was
Besides
ama
expensive.
It was it's a very expensive hobby. It's
Yeah.
very addictive. I had a great consultant, Chad Haley out in Nashville, lots of work with Neil Young and JJ Kell, and he really helped me through this process. So we kind of created a wish list of the most coveted gear that you would see at Abbey Road or any of the Sunset Sound in LA or Electric Lady Studio. I mean, what is the coveted gear that everyone wants? And so I was just on a mission, and so, obviously I went on Reverb, I went on eBay, I networked with other people. I competed with people like John McBride of Blackbird Studios in Nashville. That guy collects like crazy. There are 2 times I was trying to buy something and the guy said, "I'm sorry, John's an old friend. I had to sell it to him."
Aw.
But there's so many amazing stories. Like, one story I'll tell you really quick is that we have a gold edition Studer tape machine. That's where we run our 2-inch tape. It's an A828, and there was a guy in New York that had it pristine, only 180 hours, and that's nothing
Yeah, it's
on a
nothing.
vintage tape machine. And so, we were going back and forth. He told me how much it is. I said, "I really want this." And then he called me back. He said, "I'm sorry, the seller has changed his mind." And I thought he was the seller, but I found out he was the broker. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sad about this." Well, tell him this is my name. I'm in Tulsa. This is what I'm doing with the studio. 5 minutes later, this guy called me and he's weeping, he's crying, and he says, "Oh my God, when I was 17, I went to Tulsa and I knocked on the church studio door and Leon let me in, and it was his tape machine." And he happened to be close to it
Wow.
in New York. I thought the tape machine was in New York. He's in Dallas, which is a 4-hour drive from Tulsa.
Mhm.
And so he sold it to me. But those stories happened over and over. Like our LA 2A and 3A, they belonged to JJ Kell, and he actually had them there in Tulsa in the 1970s. So became friends with his wife and was able to acquire those. When Air Supply was here, we became really good friends, and I bought a Telefunken from them and all of their hits, "I'm all out of love."
Yeah.
All
So
that was
much.
recorded on this amazing, gorgeous microphone, and it's just like the, Ricky Nelson mic, so I have 2 mics that we got out of Berlin that belonged to David Bowie. I mean, it's an addiction.
It is.
Chad, my consultant, says it's porn addiction. It's mic porn is what he calls
Yeah,
it.
Mike Porter.
Yeah, mic porn, and it's like, I know because I have this addictive personality anyway. I'm very competitive, so I'm like, "Ooh, so and so wants this," and it's not like I have so much money I could just do that, but I wanted the best,
Mhm.
and so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of research, a lot of overnights just going on a rabbit trail, and then when you get something, you have a little bit of history, you wanna know more of the provenance of it, so that in itself is a lot of fun, just like learning the history of the building.
So, what do you want the artist experience to be when they come to the church studio? Like, if I'm an artist, let's say I'm an artist, I want to record a couple songs, I want a weekend at the church studio. What would be the artist experience that you would want me to have?
I would want you to feel very welcomed, very comfortable. Um, I would want you to feel like you're very well taken care of. We have a hospitality card that we have really great quality tea and then extra teas like throat coat. And we have a little sweets, good quality sweets and, organic mixed nuts for you and other beverages. We also put swag on the card. Um, we also give our artists discounts for the merch. But we just want them to have a really great experience and something that starts well so that they walk out saying, "That was the best work I've ever produced in my career." That's our goal. And so we don't like to bug them. We don't wanna be too corporate, but we do try to follow up. I do have these little qualitative surveys that I send to because we wanna be better today than we were yesterday. Again, there's not we I talked about this playbook. There's not a playbook for how recording studios operate. Yes, a lot of studios have a playbook, but the way that we're operating, we want to improve. What can we do? So we want the studio to be like what you would expect at a five-star hotel. I mean, we've had like one of our clients are the Dropkick Murphys, and one had a dental emergency. We had a dentist there in an hour, another one threw out his back. We
Wow.
had a chiropractor there. So almost like private concierge butler services, if there's special beverages and it's not like they're bringing writers there unless we're dealing with someone that
Yeah, that
is
that
performing.
level.
Yes, that's a little bit different, story. We recently hosted Bono and The Edge,
What? Just just throwing that out
and
there.
yeah, just name dropping, yeah, there was a writer, and so but we just want it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you're famous or not famous. I mean, we've been able to meet a lot of neat people, but, we just want you to feel great so that you feel inspired, and so many get very emotional because, again, the live room, the tracking room is the original sanctuary of the church,
Mhm.
and so I think they feel that spiritual connection, and then they think like, we get so many Tom Petty fans. They're like, "Wow, like, he was standing right here in this room." And we're about to host Stan Lynch. He has a band
Yeah,
called the
yeah.
Secret Wars, and, I get a chance to interview him. I've interviewed several heartbreakers. Unfortunately, I didn't get to interview Tom.
Mhm.
But, I love hearing their stories, and again, like Mike Campbell, I mean, it's emotional, and again, part of it, it was Native American land, and it was this church after the turn of the century, and then you think of what Leon Russell did, which is so extraordinary, and he was definitely the musician's musician that inspired so many people, so leveraging all of that with our hospitality of today, it's gonna be a great experience.
That's awesome. I I I love the commitment to making sure what I love that you said is it wasn't that the artist has, like, a good time, but that they produce their best work. And I think
Yes.
as, like, someone who is a artist and someone who's a producer, I really respect that because that's always my goal is to make sure that no matter what, it's your best work. It's not that you had the best time, it's not it's but that you're in the place, the environment to do your best work. I love that.
Right. It's a very warm not only the wood and the acoustics, but the hospitality and,
Mhm.
people seem to love it, but there's always areas you can improve, but, I really, really love the direction we are going.
All right. So, last question in this main interview section. Um, what would you say are the 5 songs that define the church studio sound to you?
Oh, that's such a great, question. I would say, "Poetry Man" by Phoebe Snow,
Okay.
would be my first one. The second one, I would say, "Breakdown," Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Wait,
I
they recorded that at the church studio?
They worked on that song at the church studio, yeah.
Really? Oh,
That
wow.
whole album is like Tulsa sound, so,
Wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
I would say, yeah, and they worked on that with Dwight Twilley. Speaking of Dwight Twilley, I would say, "I'm on Fire" by Dwight Twilley. I would say, oh gosh, I'm thinking of my favorite Willis Allen Ramsey song that really I don't know if you're a Willis Allen Ramsey fan, but
I'm not familiar with him.
oh, you're not? Oh my
No, no,
gosh.
no.
Yeah,
We're
so it's so great. I'm going blank here a minute. Um, I would say anything Leon Russell, of
Yeah, yeah.
course. There's so many great things. And then, I would say,
Anybody more modern?
oh, I'm so sorry. I was just thinking back in the day.
No, no, for sure.
So yeah, gosh. God, you really stumped me on that. I'm so bad with song titles. Um,
It could be artists too, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, um, Elle King, she's
Okay.
recorded twice with us, some really great music. The National, they're incredible.
Wow,
Yes.
really?
So, yes, I would say, Derek and Susan Tedeschi Trucks.
Wow.
Yes, so, they've recorded with us, and Susan did an amazing version of "Song for You," Leon Russell,
Oh,
and
man.
so, yes, we've had some really, truly the mountain goats, I love them so much. Um, I mean, I could just go on and on. I don't wanna, brag too much here.
Just a little bit, you know?
I'm sorry.
No,
So,
no, it's great,
I
it's awesome. That's what a
yeah,
podcast is for.
okay, well, great. So, I know, I just like song titles, oh my gosh, that definitely put me on the spot. I usually gab about whatever, but you caught me there.
Well, alright, so, Teresa, I'm gonna ask you some rapid fire questions. These are quick, first thought, best thought. We'll do a little section where you can bump what you got going on, and we'll finish up. Sound good?
Okay.
Alright. What is the last album to blow your mind?
Oh my gosh. The last album to blow my mind.
Does not have to be new, it can be old, it can be anything.
The last album I just listened to is, Glenn Campbell with Wichita Lineman because the writer of that is, Jimmy Webb from Oklahoma, and it was his birthday, and I love Glenn Campbell, and it blew my mind on how amazing all those recordings are, and of course, he was part of the Wrecking Crew too,
Oh,
so
yeah. Yeah.
Wichita Lineman.
Yeah, that's a great one. And Jimmy Webb too, man, one of the greatest
Uh,
songwriters of all
yeah,
time.
we've hosted Jimmy.
Oh, I
He's
bet.
been at the church, he's
Uh,
incredible.
he's one of my, like, I wanna get him before he gets too old podcast guest. I gotta reach out to him soon. Um, and okay, so who is a musician from the church that deserves more recognition?
I would say Dwight Twilley.
Okay.
Yeah,
A
Dwight Twilley Band.
anything in particular from Dwight we should check out?
All of his music's great. There's some new releases going out, right now with Iconics. I can't remember the name of the label, but that first album, recorded at the church studio is just incredible, but he really was even though he was part of the Tulsa sound, he really, was very cutting edge with what we call power pop.
What have you learned about music in the last year?
I've learned that, most music today is, genre fluid. There's not I mean, people cannot describe it's not like, "Oh, this is rock, this is country, this is that." People use so many different, descriptions that, I've learned that, yeah, you can't pigeonhole people's art like that.
What is one podcast, movie, or book that has changed your views on music?
I love Rick Rubin's podcast. I love his views on I mean, he's definitely old school with tape and the warmth of analog, but how he incorporates, um, health span and, longevity and health with producing really good music is very inspiring to me. It's very different than the '70s when there was a lot of, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. It's very, health, keeping your brain sharp, coming up with creative things, and
Mhm.
it's very inspiring to me.
It's funny you mentioned that. I used to live in Seattle, and I was very friendly with a punk grunge kinda legend guy, who I won't name here. But, he I would see him, and many times I would see him, he'd have, like a green smoothie with him. And he just was like, "I gotta make up, man, for all those years of just hard living, the punk lifestyle." He's like, "I'm full vegan now and works out on the cycling." All this stuff is just
Wow. I
it's,
love that. I love how health conscious a lot of the really top musicians are. They're not even
yeah.
drinking, and
No.
so, it's very different than when I first became kind of a little groupie and really obsessed with the music scene. It's just a very different environment, and it inspires me, and I love how Rick really embodies that on, really power producing.
Mhm. And then the last question, Teresa, what do people get wrong about owning a studio?
What people get wrong is that they think if they build it, they will come, and, that's not necessarily true. I learned that early on. I tried to open a little bit too early, and we weren't quite right, and, yeah, people would come, but they may not return. You gotta get everything right. So, you gotta test and retest, do A/B testing, I mentioned that earlier, and surround yourself with the right people, and you really, can't do it on your own. I have an amazing team, and, there's wisdom in crowds, and I think sometimes, and I'm a very prideful person, I try to do everything, but I've learned that, I can't, and to get to optimum and to get to the best that we can be, I have to learn and leverage other people's skills and talents.
I know I said that was last question, but I'm curious though, what kind of things were you A/B testing with the studio?
So lots of different things, definitely with different types of acoustical panels because, we have 20-foot ceilings. It's a pretty big space. And we were so close to deadening the space. And then when you pull back on that, the room is too bright. Also, with the copper and the wiring, with house power and other isolated power, and also power that is scrubbed with I can't remember what you call them, but the power is conditioned before it gets to your gear.
Mhm.
So we're very particular. Just regular utility power is not good enough, to come into it. But then when you start testing it and then put it in a different power supply, you can see that things sound significantly better, or maybe one has RF, another one doesn't have RF. Um, Also, we do a lot of fun A/B testing with plugins versus the real deal, like plate reverb, EMT 140s, versus like the plugins. So we do a lot of that just for fun to show musicians, but also to see is the original really that much better than the plugins today. So we do a lot of things like that.
What's your take on that, like plugins versus the real thing? Are there things that you think are better as the plugin versus the real deal?
I can't say that because I invested significantly on
Yeah.
things,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yours sound better, and it's almost like if someone says, "This is a really expensive bottle." I have a friend who buys $1,000 bottles of wine, but then he puts cheap wine in the bottle after you've had a few glasses, and it's just the appearance of knowing it costs that much, or I've done that with really expensive coffee before, and it's like, "Oh, that tastes so good," and it's like, it's probably just in your mind, but
Mhm,
no, I think that especially that German engineering and all of that stuff that was made, I mean, the craftsmanship and the
mhm.
beauty, the aesthetics of it, but the sound and, yeah, I mean, I mentioned the Fairchild and there are new versions of that, and people say it sounds better or at least just like it, and, I've heard them and I think the original sounds better. So,
Dang, I love it, I love it. So many interesting things, Teresa, that we've gone into this conversation. I had really kinda no idea what to expect, and this has been so much fun. What I've decided is I gotta make a trip to Tulsa and
yeah,
come visit the
please
church
do. Your
too.
questions were so fun. And yeah, you stumped me a few times and I love that. So,
Well, good. Well, Teresa, what have you got going on the next 6 to 12 months for our audience and also where can our audience find you?
sure. So the best place is just to go to thechurchstudio.com. If you like video like this, go to our YouTube channel. It's The Church Studio. Subscribe to our channel. Every time we put out a video, you'll get a notification. Um, Also, on our website, you can sign up for a newsletter. So we put a lot of interesting things in there. We try not to bug you too much, but any upcoming shows and merchandise specials and other things that we do. It's just a way to stay, engaged with our community. And, we're just kind of building things. We're further developing our artist grant program. So artists can record at no charge. So we have an application for that. So we want to do more of that. And we're just trying to learn as much as we can, helping our artists, achieve their dreams.
Well, that's awesome. We'll definitely link to both the newsletter and the YouTube page. I highly recommend everyone go check out the interviews, especially if you're a fan of Leon Russell or Joe Cocker or all the different people associated with Leon Wilson or Leon Wilson with Leon Russell and the Shelter Records era. I mean, it's so much great stuff that you've done from one podcaster to another. I've really enjoyed everything you've done over there.
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. If you have not, please like and subscribe. And till next time, thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.